Hey everyone, your movie is great here, and welcome to my 2024 films video. Trying something out visually, seeing what I can do with this, mostly because I do not feel like being on camera. I'm gonna be talking about 20 movies that came out in various parts of 2024. Time codes in the description for each of them. And also here's your spoiler warning for all of them. I'm probably going to be spoiling every one of these movies, so if you care about spoilers, don't get spoiled. And with that said, let's just jump into it.
No, not the beast! Not the beast!
The first movie that came out in 2024 that I watched in 2024 was The Beekeeper. I have no idea why, but it was. This is a movie about a retired espionage operative who seeks revenge on the people who scammed his elderly friend. I can best describe this movie as January slop. Very slow month for releasing movies. Not a lot of big stuff comes out around here. Like, when was the last time that you saw a movie that came out in January be one of the highest grossing movies of the year? Excuse me, what the hell is that? By all accounts, this movie is just a in one ear, out the other action thriller film. But, this time with bee puns. So many bee puns. I do not know why they wanted to go the beekeeper route. The action in this movie is forgettable. I literally don't remember a single bit of action in this. A lot of the characters in this movie are dumb. One that stuck out to me in particular was the President of the United States in this movie. So in the movie, Mike Schmidt is the president's son, and he does these scam operations to finance her election campaign. Now, I myself have never been a presidential candidate, but with all due respect, I feel like that would definitely be something that the president would know about. And the fact that she's all like, oh, what? This is so unexpected. It just makes her look like kind of an idiot. Like, do not check where your son, who's financing your campaign, gets all his money. Like, how can the president of the United States be this stupid? I literally forgot everything else about this movie, except that it was directed by David Ayer, who did Suicide Squad, and also a writer on the first Fast and Furious movie. Actually, that makes sense. But going back to The Beekeeper, I do not recommend it.
I hate books.
I watched Argylle, and somehow it was even more stupid than The Beekeeper. This is a movie about a spy novel author who is shown that her books mysteriously mirror real espionage. It is also a standalone spin-off of the Kingsman franchise, which I have not seen. But if those movies are anything like this one, then I would like to keep it that way. This is another beginning of the year slop spy action espionage movie. I don't know why I was on some kind of high watching these kinds of movies at the beginning of 2024, but it happened. Although this one is a comedy too, and the comedy is not good. This movie is not funny. Not funny. Didn't laugh. The green screening in this movie is distractingly noticeable. Like, there was one scene where it's just two characters in a cabin, and that was green screened in. And it is very obvious. If I remember correctly, the trailers showed off a lot of Henry Cavill and Dua Lipa being super spies. They're barely in this movie. Dua Lipa is barely in Barbie, and she's barely in Argylle. When will Hollywood know to just give me more Dua Lipa? Actually, speaking of music artists and music, there is one thing about this movie that I will not let go. Do you guys remember that quote-unquote final Beatles song that came out in November 2023? Well, wouldn't you know it, this movie came out in February 2024, and it has that song. They wasted no time shoving that song into something. And the worst part about it is the song is used multiple times in the movie. And I think the second time it's used as music when two people are dancing. And one of them is like, this used to be our song. We used to dance to this song all the time. And I'm like, no, you didn't. That song came out like yesterday. yesterday. Dumb, bad movie. Never watching it again. Strongly do not recommend.
It is usually a good idea to have a seat when your world is about to be turned upside down.
No, 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 no. But also, yes. Alright, jumping off the bad movie train and starting to talk about some good movies with Nanoshark. No, I am not joking. This is a movie about the shenanigans that occur when a microscopic shark is accidentally injected into a man's bloodstream. I need you guys to really listen to me right now. This is a good movie because it is an intentionally bad movie. There are lots of moments of intentionally awkward acting. There are some intentionally terrible digital effects. The story is intentionally bonkers insane. It's called Nanoshark. And on top of all of that, it is unironically hilarious. When I watched this movie, there was a joke, I think like 10 minutes in, about the name of a disease, and I had to pause the movie for like 5 minutes to laugh at it. That was one of the hardest laughs I've ever had for a movie. Altogether, it creates this supreme level of post-irony that I love. If you have 68 minutes to spare, please watch this movie. Go have yourself a good time. I strongly recommend it. Again, I am not joking. Do I look like the kind of person that would crack a joke?
What about 10 plus 10?
Teacher, I suspect the answer to this question is 4. Teacher.
You can't be this stupid.
I saw Kung Fu Panda 4, and it was disappointingly average. Being the 4th Kung Fu Panda movie, this one is about Po trying to find a new dragon warrior while also fighting a shape-shifting sorceress. It is abundantly clear to me that this movie was not made because they actually wanted to continue the Kung Fu Panda story, but more so that DreamWorks felt like they needed an easy cash grab. And it worked. It made around $550 million, but that's the cost of being mid. There are still bits of good action in this movie, some good banter, a few good jokes. One thing this movie definitely has over the others is the animation. Mwah, mwah, mwah. However, what this movie is far weaker at than the other Kung Fu Panda entries is the emotional moments. And I know it's kind of like, did you really expect something that deep from a Kung Fu Panda movie? Yes! Because the other 3 Kung Fu Panda movies had great emotional moments. Whereas this one was more so interested in bringing back the villains from the older movies. Don't you love it when these franchise films do this kind of thing? The Furious 5 are missing from this movie for some reason. I don't know if they're trying to launch a new trilogy without them or whatever, but they are not here and they are sorely missed because in their place is Awkwafina. I've mentioned before I am not a big fan of Awkwafina, and she just kind of plays a generic Awkwafina character in this. I don't really have much else to say about this movie because there kind of isn't much else to talk about, which is upsetting for me because I love the first 3 Kung Fu Panda movies. And with this one, I think it's okay, but it is definitely not required viewing if you want to get into the Kung Fu Panda series.
Oh, way down south in the land of traitors, rattlesnakes and alligators right away.
Okay, I watched Civil War and I didn't really care for it. You heard it here first, guys. Civil War's not very cool. Kinda mid, actually. This is a movie about war journalists on a road trip from NYC to DC to interview the president during a civil war. And if that's not what you expected the story of a movie called Civil War to be, then I'm in the same boat as you. And even more surprisingly, even though the movie is about war journalists, we don't learn much of anything. This is my first Eric Garland movie, and at least here, boy, does he not like to say anything. I've seen stuff where he himself said there was a deliberate attempt to make this movie politically neutral, which is very annoying when the movie is called Civil War. I specifically would love to know how in the world Texas and California joined forces. Like, that doesn't make any red, white, and blue sense. There were some bits of the technical elements that I actually didn't mind. Some of the cinematography was kind of interesting. There were bits of sound design that I thought were actually cool. Though I will say this movie does have a few pretty funny needle drops. Like, there was one scene where a bleeding man, desperate for help, was shot dead. And then they play De La Soul. Like, what? Also, if you've seen the film, goes without saying, but the performances in the Jesse Plemons scene were pretty great. The rest of the acting in the movie is fine. Nothing to write home about for me. Ultimately, I don't think this movie wouldn't have been as not great as it is if it just had that bit more of context that it so desperately needs. But as it stands, I don't really recommend it. I watched Challengers, and spoiler alert, it's my favorite movie of 2024. This is a movie about a love triangle between 3 professional tennis players, 2 childhood friends, and a woman who comes between them. This is my first Luca Guadagnino movie, and why did no one tell me that this man had so much sauce? I was completely floored by pretty much everything in this movie. The acting in this movie is top notch. Most notably for me, from Zendaya. No wonder she's getting put in everything now.
Zendaya? Oh, damn.
The 2 guys also did amazing. There is quite a bit of fun, semi-erotic interactions between them, and those are very fun. The EDM soundtrack from Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross is amazing and worked way better than I would have thought it would, adding these pulsating beats throughout the movie that enhance the tension. The cinematography, I mean, you really just need to see that one shot of the camera following the ball, and you get what I mean. Also, the shot where the camera is under the tennis court. I don't really care that much for tennis usually, but man, was tennis a great choice for this movie. Leads to so much fun stuff. The payoffs in this movie, oh my, I was watching this at home with my grandma, and at the end where Patrick puts the ball in the middle of the racket, me and my grandma were cheering. This movie's so much fun. Again, my favorite movie of 2024. I strongly recommend it, and I will never forgive the Oscars for completely snubbing it. I watched I Saw the TV Glow, and I thought it was cool and interesting. This is a movie about 2 high school kids whose love of their favorite TV show drives them to question their reality and identities. Right off the bat, the visuals in this movie, some of the most crazy visuals of 2024. There were quite a few shots where I was thinking to myself, this cannot be a moving picture. This is a moving painting. There's quite a bit of good acting too. Finally, a movie with Justice Smith where I can actually say I liked him. I really liked how this movie tackled the topic of nostalgia. Can't really say I've seen any other movie talk about it in the same way that this one does. And how it all plays out into the psychological horror of the movie is great. That scene at the birthday party is burned into my brain. There is a very clear trans allegory to this movie, which admittedly, I'm not the best equipped to talk about. What I will say is that people have been watching Amelia Perez and being like, why can't we celebrate a good movie about trans people? This is it. This is the good one. Watch this one, please. And I recommend that you watch it too.
Behold, the head of your precious queen, Furiosa!
I saw Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, and boy, it was honk honk meow. Being a prequel to the fourth Mad Max movie, this one is about the origins of Furiosa and everyone who gets in her way. Now, the only Mad Max movie I have seen is Fury Road, and also I only first watched it like 2 months before I watched this one. And while I'd say I adore Fury Road, I'd say that I like this movie. Got a lot of things from Fury Road that I like. The action is fun, the cars are cool, the world building is interesting, the characters are great. I especially love Chris Hemsworth as Dementis. This is probably my favorite performance from him, honestly. Yeah, take that! Men in Black 4. Anya Taylor-Joy is also surprisingly great as a younger Furiosa. Though I will say that I think the effects in this movie are definitely not as good as Fury Road. And while I do like the progression of the story, I'm not big on the pacing of the movie, and I think it very much could have been shorter than 2 hours and 20 minutes. But overall, for something that initially felt like was another studio-mandated franchise film, George Miller created another electric adventure. I recommend it.
You ever want to talk about your emotions, Tian?
No. I do.
I know, David.
I'm sad.
I know, David.
I saw Inside Out 2, and it was pretty good. Being the second Inside Out movie, this one is about Riley developing and dealing with new emotions as she enters high school. Pixar definitely has an interesting history with sequels, and I'd go to say that this new Inside Out movie is one of the better non-Toy Story Pixar sequels. The voice acting is pretty good. Apparently, the voice actors for Fear and Disgust did not return, and I did not notice. The new actors do a great job. The new emotions in the movie are decent, with Maya Hawke's anxiety obviously being the standout. There are a lot of wink wink, feel good moments in this movie. Wink wink. But there is quite a bit of this movie that is definitely recycled from the first one, with the major emotions getting locked out of headquarters and them needing to find a way back before it's too late. And overall, I don't think it's as good as the first, but I still think it is good. I like that both of these movies are very simple movies about complexity. Though honestly, if they make a third Inside Out movie, I don't really know what more emotions they could add, unless they want to add a taxes emotion. I don't know. As for 2, I slightly recommend it.
When I grow up, I want to go to the moon.
Why wait?
I saw Fly Me to the Moon, and I thought it was meh. Set within the backdrop of the Apollo 11 mission, this is a movie about a marketing specialist who falls in love with a NASA launch director while she is tasked with faking the moon landing. And if you haven't seen this movie, no, the movie does not necessarily make fun of people who think that the moon landing is fake, which is what me and my friend Liam were kind of hoping for when we went to see it. But instead, it's just kind of a whatever historical romance movie. Scarlett Johansson and Channing Tatum are fine, I guess. Their acting wasn't bad, but I wasn't too invested in their chemistry. Woody Harrelson is in this, and I remember him being vaguely decent. I legitimately forgot that this movie was a comedy. I guess that goes to show that the comedy in this wasn't very memorable. The whole stuff with the faking the moon landing is not as interesting as I thought it would be. It's basically just, we're gonna fake the moon landing just in case the real one doesn't go well. And obviously that's far less interesting than just actually faking the moon landing. But also that part of the movie doesn't really come in until much later than I expected, even though it was like one of the main selling points of the movie. This movie is also over 2 hours long, and by the time it actually got to the mission to the moon, I was pretty checked out of it. Not much more to say. I don't really recommend it. But side note, this included, somehow I ended up watching 4 Channing Tatum movies this year. Isn't that interesting for like 2 seconds?
Right, okay. Redhead.
even a pew.
I saw the only MCU movie that came out in 2024, thank God. Deadpool and Wolverine. Being the third Deadpool movie and the 34th MCU movie, my lord, this one is about Deadpool trying to save his universe from being destroyed with the help of an alternate universe Wolverine. First off, the other Deadpool flicks were comedy movies, so how does the comedy work in this third movie? It's pretty hit or miss for me. Small stuff like the intimacy coordinator joke were a hit. Drawn out stuff like the bit of Wade thinking the TVA are strippers is a miss. There's some crazy ideas like Chris Evans coming back as the Human Torch, which were very funny, but then there's also stuff like the actual he's standing right behind me joke. I wouldn't call this typical Marvel humor like Thor 4, but it is very egregious Deadpool humor. Like, I think I'm immune to the word fuck after how many times it's said in this movie. What is typical for Marvel in this are the lizard brain moments. The moments where superfans shut down all cognitive functioning and just cheer when the crazy characters come on screen. And I was not immune to that aspect. Again, Chris Evans as the Human Torch was nuts. I freaked out when Wesley Snipes' Blade walked in. And the fact that they actually put Channing Tatum as Gambit in anything blows my mind. However, while that stuff is fun, at least for me personally, lizard brain moments don't automatically make a movie good. The rest of the movie has to be substantive to me. And in the case of Deadpool 3, sure, there's a lot of talk of Wade wanting to save all the people that he cares about, which are the characters from the other Deadpool movies. But we don't actually get to see those characters, like, at all in this movie. The villains here are pretty one note, even though Cassandra does have some cool moments with her powers. And this new Wolverine's backstory isn't very well explored either. There's a lot of talking and not a lot of showing. Though I will say, even after 2 decades, Hugh Jackman just refuses to slack off when it comes to this character. Definitely the best performance in the film. On the whole, I think it's okay. I'd much rather just rewatch the fan service scenes as YouTube clips instead of watching the whole movie.
Admiral, we have enemy ships in Sector 47.
It's a trap!
I watched Trap, and boy, did I feel trapped watching this one. I wasn't, that's a bad joke. This is a movie about a serial killer who takes his daughter to a pop concert only to realize that the concert was an elaborate trap to catch him. This is the second M. Night Shyamalan movie that I've seen, with the first one being Knock at the Cabin. There are a lot of really close-up shots, and this movie was way more like what I was expecting from Shyamalan. It is wacky, it is bananas, and it is stupid. Parentheses, derogatory. Now, I've seen some people say that this movie being stupid is part of the charm of it. And I can understand that, but here's the thing. When the movie is about the bad guy outsmarting everyone and always having the upper hand, I expect there to be quite a bit of intelligence. And I'm not as kind to the characters and moments that are really stupid, which there are a lot of in this movie. And when the characters aren't being stupid, they're talking stupid. Like, these people do not talk to each other like normal people. Mr. Shyamalan, can I call you Knight? Are you a normal person? Speaking of Shyamalan, his daughter plays the pop artist that they go to see. And she doesn't really do much in the first half, but in the second half, she is much more present. And let's just say she's better at the music. Although I wouldn't say this movie is completely without merit. There are a couple bits where there are these conversations, and it's a simple shot, reverse shot thing, but the shots are these static close-ups of the characters, and I think that was pretty good. It added to what they were going for. And Josh Hartnett does a good job with, again, what they were going for. But what they were going for didn't entirely intrigue me as much as I would have liked. I don't really recommend it. I watched Flow. I actually watched all of it earlier today as of recording this, so you guys are getting exclusive day one thoughts. This is a movie about a cat and a few animal friends it makes as they traverse a flooded environment, all told with no dialogue. That last part is what I was really excited about going into this. There was another animated movie that came out in 2024 called The Wild Robot. And the first trailer that I saw for it had no dialogue. So I was like, oh cool, a mainstream animated movie with no dialogue? That sounds really cool, actually. But then I saw the next trailer and they were talking in that one and I was like, oh man. And I saw The Wild Robot and I actually quite liked it. But Flow was more so what I kind of wanted in terms of how the characters portray themselves and interact with one another. The great thing about this movie is that even with no dialogue, there is still a lot of personality in these animals, and there are a ton of fun character interactions that really make the journey they go on even more enjoyable. That's also due in part to the animation, which I love. Although I would say the animation style I like. Not love, but still like. I'm floored by the technical elements of the animation, but not so much the style, even though I do still like it. But that's pretty much the only thing that I don't love about this movie. Other things I love include the fact that there are a ton of long takes where the camera a lot of times follows the characters. The music was really well done too when it shows up. And I say that because most of the time the movie is just sounds of nature and animal noises. And those parts work because the sound design is immaculate. I would happily watch this movie again, especially considering it's short. It's only 85 minutes. Hello, yes please. Incredible movie, probably my favorite animated movie of 2024, at least from what I've seen. I strongly recommend it. Side note, this movie came from Latvia, and I'm just now realizing that the only foreign film on my list here is the one with no dialogue.
I get you in trouble?
Yeah, kinda.
I feel like we should do drugs.
I watched The Substance, and oh dearie doo. This is a movie about a woman in show business who gets fired because of her age and takes a black market drug to create a younger version of herself. This is a body horror movie and is surprisingly getting a lot of recognition this award season. Which I think is rightfully deserved. This movie is awesome. Like, there's aspects of this movie that are definitely not unique to this movie, but it's just the way that this movie does it that really stunned me. This being a body horror movie and a movie about beauty and beauty standards, the makeup had to be top notch. And thankfully, the makeup department for this movie knocked it out of the park. And the way that the movie explores the theme of beauty standards and also aging and misogyny feels very real and thankfully not pretentious. For a horror movie, I was surprised at the set designs being as bright and colorful as they were in this movie, which I thought works really well with the campy style of this movie. I forgot to mention, there is a lot of camp in this movie. Things get really fun really fast, and that especially goes for the body horror. It is excessive, it is gross, it is unnerving, but in a very creative and enjoyable way. Although I would say, please, please, please do not eat food while watching this movie. Especially shrimp. There are a lot of fun, uncomfortable moments, but there are also a lot of tense, uncomfortable moments that I was not really expecting at all. Like scenes that didn't involve any body horror, that were directed and edited in a fantastic way that made them as tense, if not more tense, than the body horror scenes. This is far and away my favorite horror movie of 2024, and one of my favorite movies of 2024. Definitely top 2, but not number 1. I strongly recommend it. I watched The Thicket purely because James Hetfield of Metallica was in it. There is literally No other reason. Based on the 2013 novel of the same name, this is a movie about a young man who seeks to rescue his kidnapped sister with the help of a bounty hunter. This is also the only Western movie I have on my list, and I'm sorry, I wish I put a better Western movie in here. I wish I watched a better Western movie that came out in 2024, because this one is just kind of it's pretty boring. I was not very interested in this man's journey, especially considering how many side quests he takes throughout the movie. I was not impressed by the music in this movie. And speaking of music, the whole reason I watched this movie, James Hetfield sure is in the movie. The rest of the acting ranges from Peter Dinklage, who is obviously pretty good, to Juliette Lewis, who is I don't really know what to make of her performance. I mean, I get what they were going for, but it really wasn't grabbing me personally. But this movie isn't like egregiously bad or anything. It's just kind of would I ever watch it again? Do I recommend it to you? Not really. Now, in the video that I did for 2023 movies, I had a string of superhero movies that I was talking about. And I'm about to do a similar string of movies, not for superhero movies, but for musical movies. Starting off with definitely one of the musicals of the year.
Hi, this is Tommy Wiseau, creator of The Room. Let me introduce you to the new Joker.
I saw Joker Folie à Deux, and man, being the second Joker movie, this one is about the murder trial against the Joker as he develops a relationship with Harley Quinn. Now, being completely honest, I'm not really interested in talking about this as a movie. If you want to know my rating for it, I rate it as certifiably insane. There, that's my rating. I'm more interested in talking about the pure insanity that this film even exists the way it is in the first place. Obviously, the studio just really wanted a sequel to the very successful first Joker movie, which I like, but it did gain a very specific following of people who idolized Joaquin Phoenix's Joker. Similarly, but not exactly the same as people who idolized Heath Ledger's Joker or Tyler Durden in Fight Club. And the director of both Joker movies, Todd Phillips, really doesn't like these fans. Throughout Folie à Deux, there are so many moments that are just there to explain and re-explain to the audience that Arthur Fleck is a pathetic loser. Not only that, but Mr. Todd Phillips went the extra mile of taking the $200 million that Hollywood gave him to make this movie, and instead of making a movie that people expected, he made a jukebox musical courtroom drama about the Joker and Harley Quinn. And honestly, in a sense, I kind of respect it. Todd did the most Joker thing ever and just let his insanity run free. Does it work well as a movie? No. But was it confusingly entertaining? Most definitely. Side note, Lady Gaga wasn't bad.
A man has fallen into the river in Lego City. Start the new rescue helicopter.
I watched Piece by Piece, and it was cool. But it could have been cooler. I mean, everything ever could have been cooler, but this in particular, ooh. This is a documentary about the life and career of Pharrell Williams told within Lego animation. And let's start there. I think the idea of a Lego animated documentary is really cool, especially for a story about a music artist. There are a lot of bits of creative presentation succinct with the music that was shown, but honestly, I feel like they could have taken it a little further at some points. I'm not saying that this movie has to blow my mind, but there were definitely opportunities for some mind-blowing that didn't happen. Pharrell's career is a pretty good story, but I do think the structuring of the film could have been a lot more thought out and unique. There were some sections of the film that feel like they kind of came out of nowhere, and other points that feel way too much like a generic modern music biopic. Obviously, the music in the movie is good. It's Pharrell Williams, yada yada. The amount of people that were involved in this movie was very cool to see, especially the Legofication of a lot of them. Give me that Kendrick Lamar figure now. Although something involving the other people. My biggest gripe with the movie, and it's a really annoying one, is the audio editing. There are so many points in this movie where it's very clear that what the people said was edited together to make new sentences. Whether it's to shorten or change what they said, I don't know. But it's so obvious and distracting that it made the movie overall feel less genuine. And this is 10 times more annoying for how they chopped up Carl Sagan's quote-unquote dialogue near the end of this movie. Can we please just leave the dead alone? But even with my gripes, I would say overall I did enjoy this movie. I slightly recommend it.
Her sister was a witch, right? And what was her sister? A princess! The Wicked Witch of the East, bro!
I watched Wicked and I was not expecting to ever say that sentence. Based on the 2003 stage musical of the same name, which in part is loosely based off the 1999 novel Wicked, The Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West, which itself is a reimagining of the 1900 series of Oz books, as well as the 1939 film Wizard of Oz. This is a movie about Elphaba, the future Wicked Witch of the West, and how she got roped into going to school with Glinda the Good. Now, I actually got to see the Wicked musical on Broadway back in 2018, and I remember being a moderate enjoyer of it, which is very appropriate considering I am a moderate enjoyer of this movie. I think a lot of us can agree that the trailers for this movie made it look terrible. Another soulless franchise film with dull color grading and celebrity castings. However, when the movie actually came out, there were tons of people that were in love with it, which I do not get. I don't hate the movie, but I was definitely not as enamored as a lot of people seem to be. I was 100% right about the color grading. I have no idea why Hollywood insists on everything looking gray. This is another issue that I also have with Deadpool and Wolverine. But I wouldn't say that this movie is soulless. There is very clearly a lot of love for the source material on display here. As far as the celebrity castings go, it's more of a case-by-case basis than I expected. Jeff Goldblum was surprisingly not great, and Michelle Yeoh was surprisingly not great. But Ariana Grande surprisingly puts on one of the best performances of the year. Like, she just completely loses herself in this character, and she is so much fun to watch. The musical sequences in this movie are fun, but I wouldn't say I would ever care to check out the majority of these songs outside of this. That also goes for the Broadway musical. But I don't know when or if I'll ever come back to this, considering it is 2 hours and 40 minutes, and I do not think it justifies that runtime. Although for a Part 1 movie, this did conclude in a more satisfying way than I was expecting. Overall, I would say I liked it more than I didn't like it, but that's not by much. For right now, this is a very slim, slightly recommend, but I'd imagine on some days it would go down to just being okay.
Oh my gosh, the duffel bag I've been looking for.
And for the last movie I'm going to be talking about, I watched Carry On, purely because my family was already watching it and I wanted to feel included. This is a movie about a TSA agent who gets threatened into allowing a dangerous passenger board a Christmas Eve flight. I feel comfortable throwing this movie into the It's fine, but I'm never going to be thinking about it ever again pile of Netflix movies. I think this movie is pretty drawn out. There very much could have been 10 to 15 minutes of this shaved off. The acting was okay, with Jason Bateman being the standout in my opinion. There are quite a bit of silly things that happen in this movie, some that feel pretty stupid, but others that are actually pretty fun. I'm thinking of a particular scene of a fight within a car, as well as the final confrontation within the plane. Overall, this movie is a pretty enjoyable watch for December 2024. But seeing as how that month is now in the past, for future's sake, I think it's okay. And that's what I have to say about 20 movies that came out in 2024. Please note these are not the only movies that I watched from 2024. I actually specifically excluded Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes because I talked about that one in a previous video. Don't want to go full ape mode on your trash opinions. But I'm always hoping to watch more movies, as I do continuing into 2025. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go see what in the world that Chinese movie is.